On today's video, I want to share with you the books I read and the online courses I took during 2020 to improve myself and grow. Let's do this. Hey everybody, what is up? So I want to share with you what I read and learned this year. Not everything is good, but I'm trying to go quickly through this. You might get some recommendations here and maybe just learn something from my takeaways. Let's dive into it right now. The first book I read this year is What You Do Is Who You Are by Ben Horowitz. Ben Horowitz is kind of like a legendary investor. He wrote a very good book that I read previously called The Hard Things About Hard Things. And What You Do Is Who You Are is basically a book about culture, how to build company culture. I have to say this book wasn't really amazing or kind of like mind-blowing for me, but it does have some interesting takeaways about how to understand that the culture is like what is acceptable and what isn't acceptable. And a lot of times, you know, the debate about this is not some kind of like a vision, mission statement that you hear on the wall. It comes down to the practical decisions that you make every day. Like, what do I do? Do I make more money or am I honest? It comes down to these decisions, like millions of decisions that you have to do every day, and you have to communicate to your team how you want them to behave. It's not very easy, and obviously there's a lot of trade-offs. But anyway, this book kind of shares stories about that with a lot of quotes from hip hop, because that's how Ben rolls. The other book that I read, and actually it's two books that I read together. One of them is The Leadership in the 1 Minute Manager, and the second one is The New 1 Minute Manager. They kind of work together. And I read them both. This was a recommendation from my business coach, Rob, and they are both very good and practical in terms of how to manage other people. Again, for me this year has been a lot about learning how to manage and grow a team. And so how to give feedback to them, there's a lot of very interesting kind of mental models in these books about how people are in different development stages, and when they are in different development stages, you need to be a different boss or a manager to them. Sometimes if they're just starting out, you need to give them a lot of guidance, but when they're really, really good, then you kind of just step back and let them do their own thing. So it kind of teaches you how to understand what kind of manager to be with what kind of team player. So that was those two books. Very, very short, but very, very actual, practical, and helpful for me to learn how to become a manager. Now, another book that I read is Sell or Be Sold by Grant Cardone. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with Grant Cardone. He's like very big, outspoken salesman. He has a big YouTube, so you might know him. You might not even like him because he's very kind of like rah, 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 rah. But this book, Sell or Be Sold, is probably the best book on sales that I ever read. To be honest, I think it's just really good sales book. And if you listen in the audiobook, and Grant will kind of motivate you. But I do think that as somebody like me who comes from a creative background, who has in a way reluctance for sale, which is something that we all kind of creative people share, I think this book gives you a lot of helpful, not sleazy frameworks about how you need to sell, how do you actually help the clients that you work with. So this book was very, very important to me, I think, and for a lot of designers, I would recommend reading this book. Another book that I read is Double Your Profits. I read this because I saw that Jonathan Courtney from AJ Inspired in reading this, and he's my friend, so I kind of trust him for book recommendation. To be honest, not an amazing book. I don't have like tons of takeaways or stuff that I actually remember from this book. One maybe takeaway that I remember from this book is that, you know, you can't just try and be the best for your, because my intention is, I always try to choose what's best for my customer or for my clients. But you can't do this. If you do this, you'll just give them your work for free, right? And then you'll be out of business. So you really have to balance what you give and what you take. And this book helps you think about this. Again, not an amazing book, but I have a way better recommendation than this book. Wait till the end. Another book that I read, this is not about business. This is actually about parenting. It's called The Explosive Child. This has been a tough year as a parent. I guess if you're a parent, 2020 has been a tough year. And one of our kids were having a lot of like tough times, and this kind of helped me frame how to help him and how to understand why he's acting the way he does. And so this was a good book in changing my perspective towards a kid when he's pissed and yelling and all of that stuff. Another book that I read is Fix This Next by Mike Michalowicz. Last year I read from Mike Michalowicz Profits First, and that was really kind of an eye-opener and changed the way that I actually manage the finances in my business. So I had a lot of expectations from Fix This Next, which the premise of this book is basically how to prioritize what initiative you need to work on next. And basically the thesis of this book is like, you might have been familiar with like Maslow's hierarchies of needs, where at the bottom there's like, we need food, we need air to breathe, and then as we go on top, it's like fulfillment, right? And so he basically says there's the similar kind of hierarchy of needs for a business. At the bottom, you need money, you need clients, you need sales. And as you go along, it's also like doing good in the world and all of that kind of things. So this book is basically a framework for helping you to think through where you are right now and what your business needs right now. I think it had some interesting ideas. I also have some criticism about it. I think he's completely lacking talking about product and what's the role of making your product better in your company. But it's an interesting concept to kind of think about. Next book that I read is called Getting to Yes. This is the best book I actually read about negotiation. I've read multiple books in the past about negotiation. They were all kind of like tactics, like, don't give them the budget first. But this book, Getting to Yes, if I remember correctly, they're like these Harvard, MIT people who are teaching negotiation and to actually like countries and delegates who do kind of like international negotiations. So like really high level. But this book has been actually very, very practical in the sense of, all right, to get an agreement, here's what you need to understand, here's how to understand what they really want, here's to understand what you want, here's how to get to the, to work through this so you can all win. Very, very good book. I actually really recommend reading Getting to Yes. Next book that I read, also on a recommendation of Bob, my business coach, called Wisdom of Finance. This is kind of like trying to explain concepts from finance in everyday stories. And it's really nice. It's really easy read and readable. My kind of takeaway from this book is basically that, everything that we do when it comes to money is, at the end of the day, we're trying to minimize risk. Everything that we do is basically insurance of how do I make sure that I'm not going to be stuck or that I'm going to still have food to eat next year. It's really interesting, kind of like a nice read, not like mind-boggling, but a nice fun read. Another book that I read and that I actually bought was Poor Charlie's Almanack, which is written by Charlie Munger. He's the business associate of Warren Buffett, and this is kind of like a huge book. I got it in my office. They don't have like audiobook or e-version for it, Kindle version for it. So I'm not done with it. I just read it during my lunch break every once in a while, but still it has a lot of really interesting ideas and I took a lot of notes. Kind of Charlie's main thesis here is that you need to have mental models from a lot of different and diverse skills. So you need to understand the basic models of mathematics, of history, of physics, of psychology. And when you have these different mental models, you can make better decisions. I like this because I'm always advocating to become full stack. So I really, really like this, and very interesting notes in this book. I'm still reading it right now. The next book that I read, I really got into history very strong this year. I'm not going to talk about this in depth because that was actually because of podcasts, but I did start reading The Story of Civilization, which is basically like 11 books that were written in the 30s about the whole story of civilization from, the start of it until maybe modern times. It was written in 1930s, but still. So I'm reading the first book, which is I'm listening on audiobook. It's like 55 hours, just the first book. So I'm somewhere in between. I've basically read through the story of Egypt and Mesopotamia and the history of India. It's very, very, very interesting. I just got to the beginning of the history of China. But also, this is so long that I'm doing this in kind of breaks. But very, very interesting. Got really deep into history this year. Another book that I read about management is The Making of the Manager. This is by Julie Zhu. I think she was a design manager in Facebook, and she kind of wrote this from her perspective, from moving from being a designer to being a manager, which is something in a way similar to the transition that I did. To be honest, I didn't found that many takeaways for me personally from this book. I don't know, maybe it's more tech oriented because she works at Facebook and this whole dynamic is not really relevant because she's managing a design team. I manage as an entrepreneur, like a team that does a lot of different things. Anyway, it wasn't like a game changer for me. Another book, reading on the recommendation of my business coach, Ogilvy, on advertising, kind of old school advertising book. Not game changer as well, but really nice in terms of understanding the difference between brand advertising and direct response advertising. Got some nice nuggets in it. A book that I'm just finishing to read right now is called Obviously Awesome. And this is a book about positioning, how to position products and companies. I think this is a super interesting concept. I think I have a few videos talking about the idea of positioning in marketing, what does it mean? But I've never had a framework for how to actually work to clarify positioning. And this is something very strategic. And I'm doing this right now to position, Flux and our products. But if I would still be a freelancer, I would definitely use this as a workshop with my clients to help them position their companies. So I think designers can really benefit from this book because it's very practical. And again, it gives you kind of a framework for a workshop that you can actually sell to your clients and bring a lot of value. So very fast, and I'm listening on audiobook, but it's fast and very useful. The last book that I read, I'm just finishing this right now as well, is called No Bullshit Price Strategy, and then some blah. It's by Dan Kennedy, who is this hilarious direct response copywriter. And this is a book that, as the title says, it's no bullshit. It kind of starts off with, if you're getting offended quickly, don't read this book. But this book is so practical and really changed my mind about so many things, mainly about charging higher prices. So I think this book is really important, has a lot of very interesting concepts in it. And I do recommend all designers to read this book and probably, raise their prices after they read it. Very well written book. If you're okay with Dan Kennedy's type of writing. Again, I enjoy it. I laugh out loud when I read this, but it might not be for everybody, right? This type of writing. Okay, I want to share a few online courses that I took this year. So the first one that I took this year is called Instant Network. It's from Ramit Sethi. I took a few courses. I took actually one course from Ramit last year, which proved very useful for me. It was called Double Engine Growth. And so I was like, I'm going to keep taking courses from him because I took a course. It was very useful. So this one is about networking, and I had a goal for myself for this year to kind of build and increase my network. But this course, to be honest, I didn't really find it super useful. It's kind of a combination of lectures of other people and just like email drips. And to be honest, it wasn't really a game changer for me. But it was good to try and focus on that for a little bit, but it didn't really impact my business. Another course that I took is not business, but it was also super important. It's called A Peaceful Parent, Happy Kids online course. And this is a parenting course that I took together with my wife. We would sit weekly at the night after the kids go to bed and listen to a lecture. And again, 2020, it's been a tough year as a parent. So, and this program, which we're just finishing right now after 3 months, have really made impact, in our home. So I don't know if you've got kids, but this is like, I think $150 that makes a huge impact. It's probably worth 10 times the price, I think, in terms of, the effect that it had in our house. So, and the last thing is that I've joined, I'm not sure if to call this a course or not, but it's kind of like a mastermind. It's from consulting.com. You might know it from Sam Ovens. This person, he has like 3 programs. The first one teaches people how to be consultants. The second one teaches people how to take their skill that they built as a consultant and turn it into online courses. And the third one is for people who already have courses, how to scale into more than 10 million, so 8 figures. So I didn't do his previous courses, but as I've mentioned earlier, one of my goals for this year was to build a network of other business people who are running similar business to me, so I can share struggles and insights and learn from what they're doing as well. And so I've joined this mastermind, which was actually pretty expensive. It's like $30,000 a year. And then we get to hang out every week with 80 other people who are in a very, very similar situation, running an online school in many different niches, from guitar playing to dating, real estate, all bunch of stuff, farming, a lot of different niches. But we're all kind of struggling with the same things, building teams and building products. And so this is not really a course, but then it's kind of like a community, joining this community of people in the same situation where you are. I really find it very, very helpful to learn from them and to get feedback from them. So that was something really, really helpful for me. So that's kind of like the things that I've invested in myself in terms of personal growth this year. I also had, wanted to go to kind of events and conferences and all that kind of thing. But obviously 2020, so not at that actually happened. Would love to hear from you. If you've read interesting books or took interesting courses, let me know in the comments below. I want to hear your recommendation, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.